Near the end of Season 4, Tfue tweeted this video. He runs up some stairs, gets close to the height limit, and then proceeds to drop down the entire way using a pre-edited wall. But lo and behold, the trick works. Tfue reaches the ground unscathed, and fall damage was solved that day. And then we vaulted pre-edits. Right? Well, if you've watched any recent high-level competitive play, then you know that, no, of course that wasn't the be-all end-all of fall damage reduction. This technique had plenty of issues. It was awkward, it was inconsistent, and it was a bug, which is now no longer even in the game. And it was going to be patched anyways. But despite these flaws, the prospect of avoiding fall damage in this avant-garde way was really appealing, because builders were getting better, resulting in bigger, taller build fights. In fact, Tfue's technique was the result of several iterations. Reddit user MetedIce first posted a video dropping down against a wall to cancel fall damage, which was then expanded on by user Legendiet, who found that it was more consistent with Windows, which was then disseminated by Martaz in a YouTube video before finally being iterated on one more time by Tfue, where he used doors instead of windows. The point being that a lot of people had time to look at this technique and try to expand on it, and try to make it viable. At the end of the day, however, the real solution was far simpler. Just use a ramp or a floor to catch yourself. And this solution was known before the window/door technique was found. Martaz had released a video on it 2 months prior, but when I was doing my research for this video, I could barely find any fanfare about waterfalling or really very many examples of it being used in a match at the time. The first time I personally saw waterfalling used efficiently and naturally in-game was in Bala's VOD review of Mongrel, which came out 3 months after Martaz first showed off the technique. Anyways, this is my long way of saying that even though something flashy is cool and interesting, it's not always the way to go. Sometimes the basics are the best. And this video is about a category of building that is often quite simple but overlooked, and is incredibly useful: catches. I've already talked about catches before in my video on cone jumps, so just to quickly recap. Catches broadly refer to the use of builds to catch a player after jumping or falling, and often manifest as techniques to sneak an additional height, prevent fall damage, or gain more control while building. Developing mastery of catches enables players to navigate builds more fluidly and access better positions and angles, improving their chances of finding opportunities to leverage against opponents. To make that description more concrete, and to also try and further convince you that catches are, in fact, worth thinking about, as intuitive as they may seem, I wanted to go over some clips I grabbed of ZexRow while he was doing wagers on stream recently. I'm going to play some clips and then pause them right before ZexRow makes certain decisions, just to give you a chance to think to yourself, what would I do in this scenario? Also, pay attention to how ZexRow uses catches to keep momentum during the fight. You may notice him make certain decisions that you might not have thought of, or maybe you see an option that you think could have been better than the one he chose. Here's the first clip.
Why is this horse so bushy? I have height.
Here's the first scenario. Take a second, maybe pause the video, and think about what you would do here. Here's a recreation I made that might make things clearer. In this clip, ZexRow uses a ramp to enable something that should be pretty familiar to most experienced players. He performs a cone jump to squeeze out some extra height in his movement, but the setup is a little bit unorthodox. Some of the interesting things here are the fact that the usual cone jump is done when you're moving forward and not done off to the side, and usually the obstructions exist after the ramp has been placed, but here ZexRow is placing the ramp late himself. Instead of doing something like using a floor to turn around the corner here, ZexRow's quick instinct rewards him with a full story of height. A lot of clever decisions like this can add up over time, resulting in a height advantage. Here's the next clip.
I can wager you guys whenever, but other people don't need to fucking wager.
And they just know one thing, and that's W.
Here's the second scenario, also recreated to be clearer. In this clip, ZexRow edits his cone into a corner edit, which then gives him enough height to jump onto the ramp he places. This is notable for two reasons. First, ZexRow is quick to identify that the cone he's running on is his, and capitalizes on that to quickly convert it into an edit. This is both material efficient, although mats don't really matter in creative, and also movement efficient, because ZexRow only needs to make one quick edit to functionally get an instant ramp. Second, ZexRow makes an interesting ramp placement after this, putting his ramp orthogonal to the wall instead of parallel to it. I don't think that this exact placement was totally planned. I think that ZexRow just wanted some way to get her up around the corner. But in doing so, he was able to get a ramp in quite early, giving him more time to take a moment to look up and check on his opponent. The jump he ultimately has to make is not particularly hard, but it's not what you might expect on first thought either. Here's the next clip. Here's scenario number 3, once again recreated for reference. In this clip, ZexRow is faced with an enemy cone this time, so he can't edit it. Also, his opponent is above and behind him. He places an upper ramp first and then utilizes it to jump and catch himself with a wall and a floor. Upon reflection, this seems like a roundabout way to do a normal floor catch off of jumping from a cone, and it definitely feels quite improvised. It's a bit ad hoc, but it's also surprisingly clever in context. What I think ZexRow wanted to do was scissor ramp outwards. He needed vertical cover here because his opponent would laser him if he didn't watch his head, but the cone blocks him from placing a lower ramp. So instead, to gain height, he jumps off the top of the cone. He quickly places a wall that cuts his momentum, and that lets him catch himself with the floor. This move lets him gain height in place while also watching his head. He does, however, lose some speed in the process. I think that a better option would have been to place only the floor instead, and then transition into a scissor ramp, which could have helped with momentum. That being said, it's really hard to come up with the optimal solution every time in such a fast-paced environment. Finally, I wanted to conclude with this last clip, which I won't pause on, but feel free to guess which part I personally found interesting.
GG's.
Okay, so it wasn't really fair for me to have you try and read my mind there, but I'm genuinely curious if anyone else felt like they saw what I saw in this clip. The moment I'm talking about is right here. ZexRow's opponent drops down and then places a wall and a ramp to block some shots. ZexRow turns to the side and pulls out his ramp blueprints, but he can't place a ramp next to his opponent's ramp, so the blueprints are red. And instead, ZexRow uses 2 floors to get closer, but by that time, his opponent has gained some more height and is now above him. The reason I think this is interesting is because I see this as this brief moment where we see ZexRow looking for a catch option instead of having a plan right away. While ZexRow and most pros navigate builds through intuition and by using certain heuristics, it's unlikely that most top players actually sit down, think of every situation where you might be able to get to some position with some technique, and then test and practice all of them. And this situation, as it appears to me, is a scenario that ZexRow's intuition doesn't immediately come up with an answer for. ZexRow isn't sure how he can efficiently close the gap here. When he pulls out the blueprints, to me, that looks like one last quick move to see if there's anything he might be missing here. But the blueprints show red, he concedes, and then uses the safe option. Looking at this setup paused, outside of the fast pace of the build fight, I wasn't even sure exactly what he could have done. I had some ideas though, so I went into creative to test some things out. At first, I tried some ramp catches. I tried connecting to the floor, and I also tried connecting next to the ramp itself. These worked alright, but had some weird quirks if you changed the setup just a little bit, causing builds to not place where you needed them to. Then, after around 15 minutes, I realized a better solution was also a pretty simple one. Just use a cone and edit it. And then right after that, I realized another simple solution. You can just jump and land on a floor and a ramp, which is super standard stuff. Either of these options allow you to easily cone the opponent afterwards, who is ramping up right above, and then quickly follow up with something, such as this side jump and a shotgun shot. Now, these options change a bit if there was no floor, for example, but my point here is kind of twofold. First, having been familiar with this situation in advance might have helped ZexRow choose a slightly better play. And second, it can be easy to overthink these things sometimes, like I showed with the trick in my intro. It's so tempting to think of over-engineered ways to achieve something when a simple answer is right in front of you. From watching ZexRow play, I've noticed that he likes to use his ramp often to find catch options. This is a pretty good heuristic to use for a couple of reasons. Ramps can often lead to more height, they connect to a lot of different structures, and they also have a pretty long range. But they're not always universally the answer, like in the case I went over at the end here. To be clear, I think ZexRow is an excellent player, and I don't want to be discrediting him just because I found one example where I thought he was a little suboptimal. What I want to do, and what the purpose of this video really is to thoroughly illustrate the importance of understanding and thinking about catches. I know this is kind of a long-winded way of doing that, but catches really aren't something that people talk about in the Fortnite community, and I think it's because they feel so basic. The term catch itself is one that I came up with on my own when developing a system for organizing all the building techniques I found during my research. In my next video, I'll be doing my best to iterate over as many useful catch situations as I can, akin to my comprehensive guide series. But I was worried that people would see it and say, all of this is so obvious, so I felt the need to make my case first. And that's all I have for today. But hopefully this video helped change a little bit about how you think about building and movement in Fortnite. If you want to see more videos where I analyze gameplay like this, let me know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching. Also, my Twitter, check it out. Bye.
Hey, now me let me that my brothers, my keeper was serving that eat the buffet by the features. My mama sees that she know how to greet me, she know how to keep me, she better get. Now me let me that my brothers, my keeper was serving that eat the buffet by the features. My mama sees that she know how to greet me, she know how to keep me, she keep me, she.
Fuck your dead homies, run your bread, homie. Got some left on me, I'm on Artesia, parked in my Beamer, bumping my own shit. I'm focused, they stuck.